You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. Today's episode is sponsored by Aptos, a leading provider of unified commerce solutions for retail. Their modern point-of-sale and enterprise solutions for merchandising, order management, and CRM are trusted by hundreds of retail brands around the world. Leading brands like Brown Thomas, Halfords, Liberty London, and WH Smith all rely on Aptos to deliver modern store experiences that inspire loyalty and maximize revenue. Learn more at aptos.com. Today's guest is a visionary tech and retail entrepreneur. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him on stage at various retail events, and so I am thrilled to welcome Andrew Xeni to the podcast today. Andrew wears a few different hats. Firstly, he's the founder and chairman of Nobody's Child. Most of you will know Nobody's Child. It's the eco-conscious fashion brand that has been named Draper's Retailer of the Year, and Marks & Spencer is a strategic investor and shareholder. Andrew is also the founder of the award-winning retail tech companies Fabacus and Soreto. Fabacus is a data-as-a-service technology business servicing both the licensing and retail industries. As CEO, Andrew works with clients including NBC Universal, Hasbro, Paramount, and many more. In 2023, Fabacus launched a digital product passport solution. This is something that comes up a lot on this podcast, so I'm super excited to speak to Andrew about this. This decision to launch a digital product passport solution, this was driven by compliant product catalogs in preparation for developing legislation that is set to shake up the retail landscape. Andrew is backed by a number of leading financial institutions, including Inovia Partners, led by former Google CFO Patrick Pichette, and New Look founder Tom Singh. So without further ado, I really hope that you enjoy my conversation with Andrew. Andrew, it's so great to see you. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation and for hosting.
No, absolutely. So the first thing I want to ask you is really about how the idea for Nobody's Child came about, because Nobody's Child is, of course, a very well-known brand here in the UK. You have a growing international presence. You're reaching everyday shoppers like me, but you're also reaching celebrities. And I think that's pretty special about your brand. And one thing I'm always hearing from retailers that come on the podcast is that it is a crowded market, especially in fashion. And you really need to have clarity around what makes you special, what differentiates you from your rivals. And I think that's what you guys do so well at Nobody's Child, that combination of affordability and sustainability. It's super clear for the customer. So Andrew, over to you. Tell us more about this and how the idea for the brand came about.
Of course. Thank you. Yeah, I mean that combination has become our little air pocket, and we're enjoying it in there. And thankfully, it's been an exciting trajectory for us. Of course, not without its challenges, like every business. We started our life off as manufacturers, and so we had a deep appreciation for supply chain, production, quality. But something that was close to our heart was ethical. And when the sort of digital era of the pure play guys were emerging and having success stories, the one thing we knew that we had control of was our own supply chain. So we had ambitions to produce or create an ethical brand. It was before sustainability featured even in our vocabulary, and we started that journey slightly naive, of course, at just how steep a curve that would be, especially with the retail landscape over the last decade. Nevertheless, we started, we were building, we were investing, and we were fighting the good fight, and we were getting these little green shoots that encouraged us and motivated us to keep going. We then started introducing more responsible fabrics, gently building that out. Got recognized as Young Brand of the Year, which was a lovely moment for us. We realized we had something good. We needed reach. That's when I engaged M&S to explore a strategic partnership. And of course, the brand continued. But when we started to realize actually that the blend of ethical and responsible, whilst delivering, as you rightly highlighted, an affordable proposition. And of course, try and as much as possible to be an inclusive brand. We didn't want to alienate one end of the spectrum or the other. Of course, we wanted to be young and hip and relevant. That was the trend for fashion. It still is. But at the same time, when she gets a bit more mature and she's got the disposable income, why does she not want to look and feel good? And who are we to dictate who does or doesn't wear our products? So all we had to do was get the balance right on our positioning. I'll say the team over the last 4 or 5 years under sort of Jodie's leadership, the real focus was elevating the brand and positioning to really leverage our credentials. But the root of our success still fundamentally is about good product, delivering beautiful product, and making it as competitively priced as we can, but staying true to our responsible sort of DNA. And it's a hard balance to strike, but I'd like to think when you get it right, it resonates, and the customers and the feedback have demonstrated that, and the success of the brand, especially over the last 2-3 years, and that recognition has been incredible for us. So yeah, very flattered.
Yeah, fantastic. You mentioned M&S, and you were, of course, the first third-party brand on the M&S platform. So I'd love to talk about your transition from being a pure e-commerce player to bricks and mortar retail. And that's been a real trend in recent years, hasn't it? This whole idea of digitally native brands moving onto the high street, and that can be pop-up space, it can be collaboration with other retailers, or even opening your own stores. Now, I think you are doing all three of these things, or you have done all three of these things. So tell us
Yeah.
more about it and what inspired that shift to physical retail.
I think there's a combination of things. I remember when we were supplying New Look back in the day. I can call them out because my partner Chumsing is the founder. We work very closely with that business. And when they had around 600 stores in the UK a few years back, I remember them going through an exercise that basically said the ideal footprint for the UK at that moment in time, the world's changed a lot since then, by the way, was around 250 to 300 stores to give you full coverage of any sort of notable town and reach. And then, of course, having online as an option. That was before online. I mean, online was clearly very successful at the time, but still not as prominent uh, as a feature in someone's roadmap as it is today, especially for retail and fashion. And so we always had an ambition to have stores, but we want to be a pure play brand first, because it's just for us, that was the model that worked. That was what was close to our hearts. Now, fast forward 10 years, it's a very, very different commercial landscape. If you dissect the value chain in retail, trying to, you know, create a pure play brand is very, very tough, especially at value prices or at affordable prices. So as we've slowly elevated the brand and we've achieved a slightly higher price point, we've become commercially viable. We only achieved profitability sort of 4 years ago, really, and now we've grown and built on the back of that, which is amazing. Obviously, the brand, thankfully, the loyalty brings the customer back. Average value of our orders are growing. So now we're a viable pure play business. It was always now the right time. I say now as in the last couple of years. It was always now the right time to start looking more broadly at what does our sort of bricks and mortar strategy look like. Now, at this point, we were already firmly in bed with M&S. Of course, they have great reach and great footprint. And if we're going to leverage their footprint and our other partners, by the way, so obviously we are in other stores. We're in about 350 stores across all of our partners. And so with that physical reach, there's no real demand for us to go and have 100 or 200 stores. Maybe one day when we exhaust everything else. But for now, we have a very clear focus on pure play being at the forefront of everything we do. But absolutely, we want to be physically accessible. We want to give our customer that brand experience. And it's incredible feedback for us when we're engaging directly with our consumer in store with regards to fit and look and feel. And so, yeah, I mean, now we've got 4 stores. We're going to continue with a few more, but we're not going to get too excitable. We are still in our infancy. We don't want to get carried away, and we don't want to be, in 3 or 4 locations in every town. That again is not our strategy. I do believe there is a balance to be struck between accessibility, desirability, and the way that you set your stall out. I don't want to be in everywhere everyone goes. That's not what we want to be. And and so yeah, stores have performed really well for us. Definitely an appetite to have a few more, but as it stands, we're going to keep that very contained so that it's complementary to our partner strategy, and allows us internally to focus our resources on our pure play priorities.
Yeah. And we often hear a lot about this halo effect where once you open stores, it actually benefits your e commerce operations. So, are you seeing that? Are you finding that stores are essentially a form of media for you guys?
We have acquired new customers just by being present where we are physically. Of course, there's a blend, especially in town in London. You've got the blend of tourism as well as the local residents and the local Londoners discover the brand or go past on their way to work, etc. But we have definitely acquired customers through our stores, and we have definitely got insights and feedback from those customers that have optimized our online. So there is an absolute requirement, in my opinion, to be able to balance the two.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting just hearing you speak how you're in a somewhat fortunate position, I suppose, having started online and then, being able to create stores, the right amount of stores, as you say, whereas a lot of fashion retailers are still right sizing for this digital era. So not only getting the balance right, but also, I guess, creating a store experience for customers that's really relevant today in terms of what they want from an experience perspective, but also from digital expectations. So really interesting stuff. Andrew, I want to also talk about product diversification because you're not just moving into new channels, you're also moving into new categories. Now, your CEO, Jody Plows, who you talked about earlier, she talks about Nobody's Child being more than just a dress brand. And you've been busy moving into new categories like lifestyle and beauty. Can you tell us what the inspiration for this is? And do you see the opportunity to expand into more categories in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the obvious one is commercially motivated. We one of the risks, of course, of being associated with dresses only is, of course, seasonal. So, we have these incredible spring summers, and then historically we would lose that traction through the autumn winter, and we would have to not hibernate, but we would have to try and protect the financials of the business through two key seasons, which doesn't make any sense at all. So we started to really combat that. I would say about 3.5 years ago was our first real strong autumn winter with a little bit more of conviction in our autumn winter proposition in knitwear and a few other categories, outerwear and stuff. But we didn't buy deep enough. We didn't go broad enough. We weren't sure. Will she buy it? And then the following year we went harder. It was incredible. It performed so well. Yet dress is over indexed. And we can't complain. At the end of the day, if she loves it and she wants it, it's entirely up to her to buy what she wants. And then we went harder again last autumn winter. Except this time there were a few different tentacles coming out of the camp. The team experimented a little bit more with. We did our first license deal in sort of beauty and fragrance, and that was interesting to test that and get some feedback and learn and see how that we can attract a new customer through a new category. We've been approached for the last 3-4 years from multiple partners across some quite interesting categories that we would never have thought of once upon a time, but we're still keeping it focused. We're not getting again too excitable. It's always tempting to collaborate with something or do something that is slightly offbeat. We're still a very focused team. Jodie runs a very prudent operation. She's very focused on keeping the business as lean as possible. And when you're growing at our current rate, which is amazing, everybody's always stretched. So it's nice to play with new toys, but it is a distraction. And so, we have to, I can say this openly, Jodie and I have had ding dongs many a times, really healthy discussions around should we and why not. But, we give her the autonomy. She's got a good nose for it, but that's what we're there for, to give her the guardrails and support and see things from sort of 100,000 feet, because she's sometimes in the trenches with the team fighting and it's a little bit harder. But yeah, there's ambitions to do more. We've got a bit more excitable this season. I think there's a bit more coming through the funnel, which unfortunately I can't share, but I know they're actively working on. And yeah, so we want to be a lifestyle brand. We don't want to be a one-trick pony. But dress is still over-indexed for us because the team do such an incredible job of the product. So I can't take that away from them. We a lot of the artwork is our own. We've got our own print designers in house. There's a lot of attention to detail and passion that goes into the development and creation and the curation of that collection. They do it incredibly well. It performs incredibly well. And if you look at the numbers and go, we're over-indexing on dresses, is that a risk? But then you look at your performance and you're over performing against market, then you've got to take the rough with the smooth. And right now, we're just happy that we're performing well, and I think we're doing all the right things to become a lifestyle brand. Well, I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're very, very close.
Let's talk about sustainability. Now, sustainability and fashion are two words that don't typically go together, and you guys are obviously an exception here. You're doubling down on circularity and sustainability. I'm going to come on to digital passports in just a minute, but first, just briefly, Andrew, I'd love to hear more about how you're embedding sustainability into the business.
I mean, look, the team are doing a whole load of things, right? When we started, like I mentioned earlier, around a priority and a focus around being ethical, and what that meant to us was we knew we owned a couple of our own factories back then, and we were working very vertically in our own operation. And so we knew everybody was paid and everything was above board and everybody was happy. And that meant a lot to us because we started life off as a factory. My parents had a small CMT factory in North London, so very humble beginnings, but very close to our heart. We're very passionate about where we come from. And that, I would like to think, comes through today in the DNA of our brand and the way we treat our suppliers, and how closely we work with them, and that they give us in return a service and agility. And then as we started to evolve into the more sustainable credentials, I never boast NC as a sustainable brand, by the way. I love the positioning of being a responsible brand and what that means for us. It just means that everybody in the organization is making conscious decisions with whatever it is, whether they're sourcing new things for our office to the products that we're procuring and sourcing and developing. Everything is done with a conscious mind and making sure that we're being responsible, but we do have to be commercially viable. So when we're trying to push the needle and push the envelope as much as we can on the sustainability front, actually, I don't deserve any credit for that. The team have been incredible. I mean, I said this the other day at an event, and I don't know if people believe me on it, but my best source of information today for my own brand is probably LinkedIn. I see us do things and initiatives and launching. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And then I'll pick up the phone and ring the team and go, how did this happen? But that's because I trust them, I empower them. That's my role, to support them. Thankfully, culturally, the whole team are aligned on this mission. And so, they're doing a whole load of things. I think we've got like 98% plus now of responsible fabrics. It might be slightly higher than that, but the ambition is to get as close, obviously, to 100 as possible. We have full visibility and control of everything, full accountability of everything, constantly trying to innovate and procure new development, new ways of working, circularity initiatives, different partners, trial and error, a lot of learning, a lot of mistakes. But that is the team. They're passionate about it. Philly, who heads up our sustainability, if you like, is great, and we're building that function out where we can. Jodie, obviously, it's close to her heart. The team have appreciated what this has meant for our brand and the way that we're recognized, and they're carrying the torch incredibly well.
Yeah. So let's talk more about digital product passport. Digital product passports, hard thing to say. I know this is something that you're very passionate about, and you guys have been an absolute trailblazer. So tell us more about the work that you're doing in this space.
Yeah, I mean, we discovered digital product passports by luck, right? So it's been incredible to be recognized for this, and of course, I'm very proud of it. But my pride stems from having two of my companies collaborate to unlock this capability and this motivation to achieve something that we all believe is so special. But the reality is, it all stems from my technology business, Fabacus. We set out to solve a problem in the licensing industry. It's a very, for those that do or don't know the licensing industry, licensors, IP owners are typically disconnected from their value chains because they license out their IP, and then the licensee actually goes away and does what they do best, which is make, distribute, and sell products. And the licensor doesn't really feature in that process other than granting IP rights. And what we wanted to do was to fix that. We had to build this proprietary technology to fix it, because it's a very complex global supply chains, multiple categories, regions. And as the regulation was unfolding, and I remember being in this room actually in our offices in Fabacus about 3 years ago when we were talking about the regulations of potentially mandating digital product passports, we all looked at each other and said, we've been doing this for like 3 years. We create these unique serialized keys that come from structured catalogs for the licensing industry. Um, and what a privilege. I've got my own brand. Let's be first. I want to be first and I want to be the best. It's a great cause. I think it's amazing to be recognized as a leader in the forefront of something for good. And I felt like it was my calling, being transparent. It was like, okay, this is it. I'm when I started Fabacus all those years ago, I've still got diagrams, architecture, and a solution for vertical retail that basically achieve where we are today. It was always about having visibility, traceability, transparency all in one place to give retailers control and accountability of what's happening in their supply chain across their products. So fast forward 10 years, the rest of the world's caught up. This legislation is coming in. We happen by luck, by chance, I know we make our own luck, but to build this proprietary technology that enables this capability. And concurrently, I happen to have a brand that can be my ideal hero guinea pig. Now, when I challenged the team with that, it didn't go down quite as well, because I gave them, I think, 4 or 5 months to execute. We put all the codes in a fern cotton collection. We thought that's a perfect landing strip for us, and having fern cotton as an ambassador and with sustainability being close to her heart too, we knew it would marry really well. And the team worked incredibly hard to execute, and that was our first collection. I think it was like 27 styles. I can't remember how many thousands of units, 30 or 40,000 units at the time, that were the first products to market with digital product passports. And actually, we couldn't tell anyone there was a passport in there because we weren't sure that we would be at the standard we wanted to be in time for launch. Now, they did it, they nailed it. It was the night before, to be fair. But we had all of these units out in the distribution centers and our stores, with passports in them, but we had nothing to tell the consumer that there's a passport in the product. And now, of course, we've grown up and evolved. Now the call to action, the integration into the CRM, the new collection we've just launched with Poppy Delavine. We're publishing the passports to our website. There's a whole load of magic happening now, but that's 3 years in the making.
Yeah.
We've a lot of learning, a lot of hard work, both sides of the fence. The brand worked incredibly hard with their supply base and partners. Fabacus has worked really hard to support them in execution and scalability. But we are on track for autumn winter. Every Nobody's Child product will have a digital product passport. And that is a
Wow.
mammoth undertaking, that the team deserve credit for.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And I want to get your thoughts just briefly on how you think retailers should respond. Because, with these legislative changes accelerating the shift towards transparency, it's going to put pressure on retailers to respond. But there's also a lot of firefighting right now. It's a difficult market, it's a climate of uncertainty. Retailers are dealing with tariffs and cost headwinds. I mean, what advice would you have to retailers who are trying to kind of balance that with the need to keep up with legislation and be sustainable?
So, I mean, I'm very conflicted with that question for various reasons, but it comes from a good place. I totally sympathise for retailers that are experiencing all sorts of challenges. It's a very, very tough climate, like you say. But here's the thing: the proposition we built at Fabacus was primarily around giving brands control and structure. Now, with that control and visibility comes accountability, of course. But with that control and capability yields incredible returns. I would argue now is the time more than ever to really go away and consider how you're going to deliver this and execute this. Now, thankfully, I'm in a fortuitous position from a tech perspective to be working with some of the biggest brands and retailers on the planet, helping them on that journey. And I've been very pleasantly surprised how forthcoming and assertive they've been in embracing this evolution and this journey. Now, they're not all going to get to where we are with Nobody's Child today overnight. We're smaller, we're more agile. We've been it's been at the heart of what we've been doing since the beginning. I appreciate that. But we're on a mission to get everybody to that sort of operational excellence as close as we can, as fast as we can. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's going to still take everybody a year or two for sure, especially the big retailers. There's a couple in the public domain that I can talk about that people know we're working with, like Tesco's and others. Huge volume, huge diversity across their general merchandise. A lot of work to be done. And we're going to work as closely and as hard as we can for these people to make sure we get them there. The reason I'm doing it, whilst the motivation is a positive one, the byproduct of this effort is incredible. If you look at Nobody's Child today, we know that our customer loves the authenticity. They love the honesty. They're inquisitive. They appreciate. They don't understand yet, the consumers, all of the things that we're presenting them, but they appreciate the effort and they're inquisitive and they understand that this is inevitably a growing demand from the consumer base. And so, I'm banging the drum for the retail landscape to get their ducks in a row as quick as possible, because I actually think it's great for the business. It's bizarre. Looking back now, I can't imagine a brand that operates without it. But at the same time, of course, I do understand there's legacy systems, legacy processes, legacy cultures, legacy mindsets that are all barriers to entry. And I'm trying to break down some of those barriers and help these guys on the journey. But it's such a powerful tool. It yields such an incredible ROI. I'm talking to all of my customers at product level, irrespective of where they buy my product. Our customer registration rate has been phenomenal. And, if I'm paying to acquire those customers ordinarily, and now I'm getting them, if you like, for free. I mean, nothing's for free, but it's a negligible cost. What a powerful byproduct of doing good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it will become the norm, right? At some point, customers will expect to have that level of transparency and make those more informed decisions when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah, I think that's a longer journey than we'd all like it to be from a positive standpoint. But what I will say is, we've actually had customers go into our stores and ask to scan a passport.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
unfortunately, not
that
not
awareness is
always
there now.
buying, but we've had people going, and they've heard or read about it, and they've scanned to engage and see what it's all about. And actually, a particularly lovely moment yesterday. One of our some of our collection was featured on This Morning, and they talked about the digital product passport. I'm pretty sure that's the first time digital product passports have featured on national TV. So that was lovely for us. Obviously, great exposure for the brand, so we're grateful for that. Great exposure for what we're doing at Fabacus, so amazing. But all of that aside, to be recognised at the forefront of this evolution is a particularly proud moment and something that is close to my heart, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like such an exciting time for you, Andrew. We could be here for hours, but I am conscious of your time. So always great to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.